Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something wetter, deeper, and significantly more dramatic than the time you dropped your phone in the toilet and pretended it didn't happen. The ancient world that may be sitting under the Sunda Shelf. Yes, the drowned plains beneath Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. A place so massive that if it ever resurfaced, your GPS would need therapy. Before we get swept away by 20,000-year-old tides, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy falling asleep to mildly unhinged historical storytelling. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Somehow it is always 2:14 a.m. for this channel's audience. A mystery older than the pyramids. Now, dim the lights. Turn on a fan for that soft white noise ocean breeze effect. Tuck your feet under the blanket so the imaginary prehistoric crabs can't nibble your toes. Let's pause together, peacefully, before history gets feral. Have you ever wondered what life felt like on a continent that no longer exists? Did prehistoric people argue about who left the fish out overnight? Did traffic jams exist, but with canoes? Did someone complain that their neighbor's hut was blocking the view of the mammoth migration? Did early city councils debate crucial zoning issues like how close is too close for a crocodile-infested river? Did ancient people stress-eat roasted mollusks the same way you demolish a bag of chips after work? And more importantly, if your ancestors built cities out there, what did it feel like the day the ocean came for all of it? Because tonight, congratulations, you've just woken up somewhere around 12,000 BCE, on a warm, breezy morning on the Sunda Shelf, a place that is very real, very big, and currently very underwater. You stretch, crack your Stone Age spine, and the first thing you hear is the ocean whispering, "Don't get too comfortable. Good luck." You wake to a sunrise so golden it looks fake, and for a moment everything is perfect, until you realize the shoreline has moved several meters overnight. Again, like the world's slowest jump scare, the sea keeps inching closer, pretending you won't notice. It's early, that soft, prehistoric twilight hour, when the air still smells like dew, wild grass, and mild existential dread. You rub your eyes, stretch your spine until it makes that concerning crack, and notice that your toes are dangerously close to touching damp sand. The sea is pulling one of those "who me" expressions, shimmering innocently in the distance, as if it weren't actively trying to relocate your entire village into a part-time oyster farm. Let's talk about the ocean, not the cute postcard ocean, not the "I needed a vacation so I impulse booked a resort" ocean. I mean the prehistoric ocean, unpredictable, dramatic, and emotionally unstable. If today's ocean is a moody teenager, the Sunda Shelf ocean is a full-grown adult who has read one too many self-help scrolls and decided to reclaim its boundaries. You stand up, wipe the sand off your legs, and try to convince yourself that the shoreline surely didn't move that much. Maybe you're misremembering. Maybe the earth is tilting. Maybe you're lying to yourself. A rich, ancient tradition. A few other villagers wander out of their huts, all wearing the same expression, the universal prehistoric "not this again." You exchange the kind of tired nod people share after a bad week, or like modern adults making eye contact before their morning coffee. Except instead of caffeine withdrawal, you're all quietly processing the fact that your continent is drowning in slow motion. A child points at the new waterline, as kids often do, loudly outing the one thing everyone's trying to ignore. One of the elders squints at it, grumbles something about, "In my day, the land stayed where you left it," and hobbles off to poke the shoreline with a stick, which is the prehistoric equivalent of filing a complaint with City Hall. It's time for damage control. You walk toward the water, carefully like it might lunge at you, and examine the ground where your favorite sitting rock used to be. It's now halfway underwater, looking smug about surviving longer than half your belongings. The sand is mushy beneath your feet, rippled with tiny patterns left by the tide. You notice the smell too, richer and saltier than usual. The air carries hints of seaweed, oyster shells, and the kind of humid warning that says you're going to need to move those huts again. Let's talk modern comparison. Imagine waking up, going to make coffee, and discovering your kitchen has drifted 2 feet toward the neighbor's yard. That's what your life feels like, except instead of calling the landlord, you are the landlord, tenant, and unpaid maintenance staff, and your entire housing complex is slowly being repossessed by the Pacific Ocean. You sigh and head back toward camp. You pass your cousin, kneeling in the mud, carving yet another old shoreline marker into the ground. The marks are starting to look like a timeline, a tragic geological version of those height charts parents use on door frames. Someone tries to lighten the mood by suggesting maybe the sea just wants to be friends. No one laughs. The ocean does not give off friend energy. It gives off imminent lease termination energy. Still, there is a strange beauty in it. The rising sun paints the water in silver and amber. The wind hums softly through the reeds. Birds glide overhead with the peaceful confidence of creatures who can simply fly away when things get bad. Must be nice. You inhale deeply, salt, warmth, grass, and underneath it all, the quiet reminder that the world is shifting, literally beneath your feet. The sea has stolen another piece of your morning, another strip of land, another illusion of permanence. But for now, you stand there, breathing, watching the tide shimmer, as if nothing's wrong, because that's what people do. We adjust, we sigh, we mutter, we pretend the water isn't creeping closer, and tomorrow morning, when the sea looks even closer, you'll act surprised all over again. Out of tradition, if nothing else, your breakfast is a bowl of something suspiciously fishy, mildly crunchy, and aggressively room temperature. It smells like the ocean, your hands, and the wooden bowl all conspired to ruin your day. You stare into the bowl, hoping the contents might miraculously rearrange themselves into something more edible. They do not. Instead, the surface gives a gentle wobble, the kind of wobble that suggests the food might still be thinking. You pinch a piece between your fingers. It squishes, it crackles, it fights back a little. Truly, nothing says good morning like a meal that refuses to define its own texture. Let's talk about prehistoric cuisine. Your ancestors will eventually invent bread, spices, and the concept of refrigeration. But right now, culinary innovation means heated slightly near a fire that is also misbehaving. Every meal has two flavor profiles, undercooked or oversmoked. Yours seems to have achieved both, which is impressive in a tragic way. You bring the bowl close to your face. The smell intensifies, salty, earthy, and vaguely metallic, like someone attempted to perfume the ocean with anxiety. In the background, waves slap lazily against the shore, reminding you that the seafood you're about to eat probably lived, and maybe died, within 30 meters of your hut. You take a tentative bite. It crunches, but also somehow doesn't. Congratulations, you've invented Schrödinger's breakfast. A few other early risers shuffle around camp, clutching their own wooden bowls, with the resignation of people who know they will be eating versions of this meal for the rest of their lives. One person mutters, "Could be worse," which is both unhelpful and technically historically accurate. It's time for context. Breakfast on the prehistoric waterfront is less meal and more sustained negotiation with the food chain. You eat fish because fish are nearby. You eat roots because they can't run away. You eat certain crunchy things because someone dared another person to try it once, and shocking bodily survival rates led to a tradition. You take another bite. It tastes damp, not wet. Damp, like it has emotional baggage. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of low tide mixed with morning dew and the faint musk of early humans who have not yet invented deodorant. The entire scene feels rustic, peaceful, and faintly repulsive, the kind of vibe that modern people pay a lot of money to experience in themed, authentic living retreats. Let's talk modern comparison. Eating this fish-like substance is a lot like eating leftover takeout straight from the fridge. Not warm enough to be comforting, not cold enough to be refreshing, not flavorful enough to enjoy, but too substantial to justify skipping. It is a meal you consume because you must, not because the universe has blessed you. Across the camp, a toddler loudly refuses their breakfast by launching it at a nearby log. The log looks offended. An elder scoops the food off the ground, sniffs it, shrugs, and eats it anyway because prehistoric parenting standards are low and prehistoric immune systems are reckless. Someone asks you how your breakfast is. You respond with the universal prehistoric expression, a long exhale through your nose. A group of foragers wander back into camp carrying a new assortment of edible things. One holds up a spiky root proudly. You sincerely hope it's not destined for your bowl tomorrow. You finish your meal, or more accurately, reach the point where you can no longer emotionally continue, and set the bowl aside. The ocean glitters, the breeze hums through the palm fronds, and your stomach registers a gentle, suspicious gurgle that could be hunger, satisfaction, or an early warning signal from your digestive system. But here's the thing, breakfast, even a prehistoric one, has a strange comfort to it, a routine, a rhythm, something grounding in a world where the land is sinking, the sea is rising, and half your belongings already smell like low tide. You sit for a moment, letting the morning settle around you. The world is shifting beneath your feet, but your breakfast, your crunchy, squishy, lukewarm breakfast stays stubbornly consistent. And weirdly, that helps. Across the settlement lives a smug family experimenting with early gardening. They proudly point to sprouts that are definitely weeds and insist this is the future of food. You're unconvinced. To be fair, they've always been that family, the sort who try things no one else asked for. Last season, they attempted to domesticate a wild boar. It ended with a destroyed hut, 3 sprained ankles, and a boar who now walks around camp like he pays rent. So naturally, they've decided their new project will be plants. Controlled plants, organized plants, plants that obey. You watch them from a distance, crouched over a patch of dirt they've dramatic ally fenced off with sticks. They hover over it like anxious new parents. Every morning they whisper encouraging nonsense to the soil. Every afternoon they shoo children, animals, shadows, and even wind away from their garden. You wander closer, partly out of curiosity, and partly because this is the most entertaining thing happening today. They wave you over with the zeal of people about to unveil the next big prehistoric innovation, something between sliced bread and mild delusion. Look, the father says proudly, pointing at a cluster of thin green shoots. Food! You kneel, squint, and observe the miracle. It is, unmistakably, a weed, a thriving weed, a confident weed, a weed that probably belongs here more than you do. You try to be polite, but these sprouts look like the same weeds you spent half of yesterday pulling out of the communal paths. One of them is even growing sideways, as if intentionally trying to escape the pressure of being the future of food. Let's talk early agriculture. Growing plants on purpose is a cute idea, in theory, but your ancestors don't have manuals, tools, or any concept of plant biology. They don't know about irrigation, soil nutrients, root systems, or the fact that their prize sprout is literally toxic if eaten in quantity. They're essentially guessing, enthusiastically, loudly, incorrectly. The mother beams and holds up a handful of seeds like a magician revealing her trick. "We're selecting these for yield," she whispers as though revealing state secrets. You nod, not wanting to crush the spirit of the first recorded attempt at selective breeding that is absolutely going to fail. Let's talk modern comparison. This entire gardening experiment feels like your coworker announcing they've started a small herb project in their kitchen, only to kill the basil within 48 hours because they forgot the sun exists. Except in your world, failure doesn't just mean no basil, it means hunger, or more of that crunchy, questionable seafood breakfast. The family fusses over the garden, brushing dirt gently, relocating pebbles, and giving names to particularly promising weeds. One sprout is called Little Hope, another Leafy Boy, the third, inexplicably, Greg. You watch as their toddler toddles into the garden and proudly uproots half the work. Everyone gasps. The father panics. The mother yells, "No!" with the energy of a woman watching her favorite clay pot shatter. The child beams proudly, convinced they've helped. The boar they previously tried to domesticate wanders over, sniffs the garden, and displays the exact level of interest it deserves. None. He moves on, probably searching for something actually edible, like your breakfast bowl from earlier. You try to leave, but the family stops you. They insist you taste test a leaf from their crop. You decline, using the ancient excuse of "I'm full," even though that is a lie and everyone knows it. Still, you can't help but admire them, their optimism, their persistence, their willingness to believe food can be convinced to grow on purpose. You head back to your hut, glancing over your shoulder at the garden. The sprouts sway gently in the breeze, as if mocking everyone involved. Someday, thousands of years from now, agriculture will transform the world. Entire civilizations will rise on the backs of wheat, rice, and barley. But today agriculture is just one family poking dirt with sticks and insisting they're visionaries. And honestly, you kind of hope they're right, because if they're not, breakfast tomorrow will once again be crunchy, fishy disappointment. You set off across the lagoon only to find half the settlement stuck in a floating traffic jam. Someone lost a paddle, someone else is arguing about right-of-way, and a crocodile is absolutely third-wheeling. You stop paddling mid-stroke, letting your canoe drift while you try to process the scene unfolding before you. The lagoon, normally peaceful, glassy, and reserved for quiet existential reflection, is now a prehistoric version of Monday morning gridlock, except instead of frustrated commuters in metal boxes, you have barefoot neighbors in hollowed-out tree trunks shouting things like, "You yield!" and "The current was with me," as if currents obey traffic laws. Let's talk about canoe culture. Your people have been using canoes for generations. They're fast, light, maneuverable, and absolutely not designed for tight clustering. Still, every morning, half the settlement squeezes into the same narrow waterway to fish, trade, or simply escape the responsibilities of camp life. The result is exactly what you see now, chaos floating gently on the tide. You try to weave between two stalled canoes, but one man throws his arms out dramatically, claiming invisible territorial rights to the entire left side of the lagoon. Another villager is frantically scooping water out of her canoe with a seashell because she overestimated the weight capacity of her, well, everything. A pair of teenagers drift by, laughing as though none of this is their problem, which, to be fair, it isn't. Youth transcends eras, and then there's the crocodile. He floats lazily in the center of the congestion like he bought VIP seating. His eyes are half-lidded, his tail sways just enough to remind everyone he exists, and he radiates the exact vibe of a middle manager observing workplace incompetence. No one wants to acknowledge him, but everyone is accommodating his personal space with suspicious enthusiasm. Let's compare this to modern life. This isn't so far off from sitting in traffic behind a line of cars while someone in a minivan tries to merge at the worst possible angle. You know that merge is doomed, but you watch anyway, like it's a live performance art piece. The only difference is that instead of honking, your neighbors express frustration through passive-aggressive splashing. You attempt to paddle around a canoe that's blocking half the channel. Its occupants, a very opinionated couple, are loudly debating whether the problem is the tide, the canoe, or each other. You decide to give them a wide berth, not because of the argument, but because their canoe is leaning at a dangerous angle that screams, "We're going to capsize in 5 minutes." Your paddle dips into the water again, spreading gentle ripples. The lagoon is warm and shallow here, tinted with the smell of brine, wet wood, and a hint of seaweed rot that never fully leaves your nose. The morning sun reflects off the water in blinding flashes, dramatic enough that you feel like you're in a prehistoric action movie about canoe commuters. Up ahead, the central knot of boats appears to be untangling itself. Someone has found the missing paddle. Unfortunately, they found it by stepping on it in the water and screaming loud enough to startle 3 nearby pelicans. The crocodile, done with the incompetence of your species, slinks underwater with a silent, accusatory slide. Everyone freezes until they remember crocodiles aren't teleporters. Then the shouting resumes. You finally squeeze past 2 fishermen who are locked in a heated dispute over who drifted into whom. You don't care. You don't even pretend to care. You're in survival mode now, just trying to reach the far shore where you can breathe air that isn't 60% canoe drama. At last, the water opens up, the noise fades behind you, your paddle moves smoothly again, and for a moment drifting across the lagoon, you feel a tiny spark of gratitude. Because yes, canoe traffic is infuriating. Yes, people will always find new ways to block each other's progress. And yes, prehistoric neighbors are shockingly stubborn about imaginary water lanes, but at least you think as you glide forward, you didn't capsize, you didn't lose a paddle, and the crocodile chose someone else to follow today. You watch a fisherman cast a net that looks like a tangled spiderweb made by a drunk spider. Somehow, it catches fish anyway, which raises more questions than answers. The fisherman in question stands ankle-deep in the lagoon, chest puffed with confidence, as if he personally invented water. The net, and calling it a net, is generous, billows out like a loose pile of sea-matted twine. It looks like it was woven by someone with poor eyesight, questionable priorities, and absolutely no understanding of geometry. And yet, when he tosses it into the water, the thing unfurls with surprising grace before sinking like a gentle accusation. Within seconds, fish practically leap into it. You blink. He wades forward triumphantly. You blink again. Fish flop around in the net, as if participating in a community theater performance titled "How to Make the Fisherman Look Good." Let's talk prehistoric fishing technology. It's creative, it's chaotic, it's usually made out of materials that technically can hold together, but only if they're in the mood. Nets are woven from palm fibers, bark, clothes that have lived too many lives, or vines that probably held important structural roles in trees before someone said, "Hey, that could catch lunch." Somehow this patchwork mess works, not because of science, not because of design, but because the fish have clearly never evolved a solid escape plan. You wade in a little closer, trying to observe without looking like you're observing. The fisherman beams at you, a big, proud grin that insists, "See, I told you my net works," as if the net itself didn't. Just violate 3 laws of physics, 2 laws of common sense, and at least 1 boundary of personal dignity. "With technique," he says, demonstrating a wrist flick so sloppy it should have dismantled the entire operation. But the fish don't know any better, so the net fills again. He lifts it, dripping, swishing, shimmering in the sunlight. You admire the scene despite yourself. The smell of wet fiber, algae, and fish guts creates an aromatic signature that could be described as bold, earthy, and deeply concerning. The water around your shins is warm, carrying the faint hum of underwater activity, little flickering shadows darting beneath the surface. A younger fisherman joins him, carrying a spear carved from a branch that looks like it lost a fight with a termite. He aims it at a fish darting by. misses completely, and immediately pretends he wasn't aiming at that one. You've never seen someone restore their dignity this quickly. He tries again, misses again, repeats the dignity restoration ritual, but eventually, through sheer stubbornness or pity from the fish, he hits his target. The spear wobbles dramatically, but it holds. Meanwhile, your original fisherman friend continues to pull miracle after miracle out of his tangled net. You ask him how he made it. He shrugs. Found vine, then tied vine again. A masterclass in engineering. Let's compare this to modern life. This whole process is like watching someone fix their sink using duct tape, prayer, and the emotional support of nearby bystanders. And somehow it works, infuriatingly, every single time. You want to question the method, but results are results. At one point, the fisherman proudly shows you a particularly large fish stuck in the most chaotic part of the net, a place where the fibers look like they were tied by 3 different people who weren't speaking to each other at the time. The fish's expression says, "I made mistakes." A crab scuttles by, observing the scene with unearned superiority. As the sun rises higher, casting gentle sparkles across the water, more villagers come to fish. The lagoon fills with spears, nets, improvised baskets, and tools that look like early prototypes of modern idiocy. Everyone catches something. Even the elder with a net consisting of 2 sticks, and misplaced hope returns with at least 1 fish. Eventually you return to shore, watching as the successful fishermen carry their catch back to camp. They puff their chests. They tell exaggerated stories. They pretend their techniques are matters of skill rather than pure prehistoric luck. And you know what? You let them. Because in a world where the sea is rising, the land is sinking, and breakfast is often a gamble, sometimes it's nice to believe that even the most ridiculous tools can still bring in something worth keeping. Your family's cooking fire has 2 moods, extinguished or volcanic. Prehistoric cuisine depends entirely on whether the flames are feeling cooperative today. You crouch beside the pit, staring at the smoldering pile of wood like it's a coworker who promised to finish a task by end of day, and then immediately logged off. The fire crackles weakly, giving you the kind of heat you could comfortably warm a single eyebrow with. You jab it with a stick. It wheezes smoke back at you. Offended, dramatic, unhelpful. Let's talk fire science. You don't have lighters. You don't have matches. You don't even have the concept of recipe temperatures. You have friction, hope, and the faint dream that one of your relatives will one day discover spark technology by accident. Fire, for now, is a moody roommate. Your cousin crouches next to you and tries blowing on the embers. His attempts sound like someone repeatedly sighing into a flute. The fire fizzles, sputters, and decides to die entirely, just to make a point. The adults gather around, muttering the prehistoric equivalent of, "Are you kidding me right now?" Step 1 of cooking begins. Everyone argues about why the fire went out. Theories include, the wood is too new, the wood is too old, you frightened it with your energy. The spirits disapprove of breakfast. You know the truth, the fire simply doesn't respect you. After 10 minutes of rubbing sticks together, blowing into handfuls of dry grass, and yelling at the smoke like that might help, the fire finally catches, instantly skipping from barely alive to rage-filled inferno. Everyone leaps back as flames roar upward in a burst so dramatic it could win an award for Best Supporting Actor in a disaster film. Prehistoric kitchens are unforgiving. Your roasting pit is suddenly so hot that approaching it feels like stepping into the mouth of the sun. You can hold a hand near it for approximately 2 seconds before your skin files an official complaint. Still, you must cook. Your mother brings over a skewered fish. It was caught this morning using a net held together by desperation and plant fibers, and now it lies limp and expressionless, awaiting its fiery fate. She gives you the look, the one that says, "Don't ruin this," the same look modern mothers give when handing a toddler their favorite bowl. You lean in to place the fish near the fire. The heat blasts your face. Your eyelashes attempt to curl away from danger. You try again, this time quickly. The fish lands in cooking range and immediately begins sizzling like it's auditioning for a breakfast commercial. A few drops of fat fall into the flames, which flare triumphantly, delighted by the sacrifice. But of course, nothing here cooks evenly. The front end burns, the middle stays raw, the tail somehow turns into charcoal within seconds. You rotate the skewer, hoping to find the mythical angle where food cooks properly. You do not find it. Someone behind you pipes up with advice. There is always someone with advice, especially someone who has never successfully cooked anything in their life. They insist you're holding the fish too high. Another person claims you're holding it too low. A third person suggests you throw it directly into the fire, like the ancestors intended. You ignore all of them because the fish is now dripping in ways that feel both delicious and faintly concerning. A breeze carries the smell of roasting meat across camp, savory, smoky, and slightly oceanic, like grilled seafood served in a workshop with poor ventilation. But the fire has opinions. Just when the fish looks edible, the flames decide they've had enough and shrink into a sullen smolder. No warning, no courtesy, just a dramatic collapse into uselessness. Someone gasps as though witnessing a tragedy. The fish stares back at you, half burned and fully disappointed. You poke the logs again. The fire groans. You groan. Your stomach groans. Eventually, through a combination of persistence, luck, and the fire briefly remembering its job, the fish finishes cooking. Mostly, probably. You convince yourself that a little underdone is culturally authentic. You present it to your family like a sacrificial offering. They nod approvingly because prehistoric expectations are wonderfully low. It tastes smoky, chewy, and slightly gritty, the three major food groups of your era. And as you finish your meal, silently congratulating yourself for surviving another round with the world's most temperamental appliance, you realize something. No matter how much the land sinks or the sea rises, your cooking fire will always keep you humble. Wild boars stroll through camp like they're evaluating real estate. Monkeys stare at you with unsettling intelligence. Even the birds seem to be hiding something. You've lived around animals your whole life, or more accurately, you've lived near animals who occasionally wander through camp to judge you. Usually they're skittish, loud, unpredictable, and deeply uninterested in human affairs. But today something is off. A boar walks past your family's hut with the swagger of someone checking property lines. He pauses, sniffs the air, grunts thoughtfully, and gives you a look that reads, good drainage, excellent sunlight, might put a wall here. Then he moves on, unconcerned, as if he's already picturing his dream home on what is very clearly your cooking area. A monkey sits overhead on a branch, staring at you with the unnerving calm of a therapist, waiting for you to open up. He doesn't chatter. He doesn't throw anything. He just observes. You feel judged, and not just animal judged, deeply, profoundly judged, like he knows all your secrets, including the time you pretended to help with night watch but actually fell asleep sitting up. A flock of birds circles overhead in slow, coordinated patterns, like they're having a private strategy meeting. They're quieter than usual. No shrieks, no bickering, just an eerie, synchronized silence. You can't help but feel they're plotting something, or at least preparing for a group migration they're intentionally not inviting you to. Let's talk prehistoric animal behavior. Normally, animals are excellent at running away from things that look like you. And you, to be fair, often look like a walking danger noodle armed with a stick. But today, the animals behave like the calm before a storm, as if nature is whispering, "Pay attention," but refuses to offer subtitles. You step out into the clearing, and that's when you notice it. The entire animal kingdom seems to be running on a delay. Movements are slow, eyes linger too long. Even the insects seem to be having existential moments, crawling across logs with unusual hesitation, like they're contemplating long-term goals. A group of deer grazes near the lagoon, not in their usual skittish formation, but in a relaxed circle, almost like they're sharing gossip. Occasionally one glances toward the water with a vague sense of dread, then goes right back to chewing. You relate deeply. A lizard suns itself near your feet, utterly unbothered by your existence. You gently nudge it aside. It blinks at you, slowly, like a creature processing a thought it rarely needs. Are you the problem? Or is the world ending? Fair question. Even the dogs, well, the semi-domesticated wolves you pretend are dogs, seem strangely serene. One lies on its side, belly exposed, tail flicking lazily. Normally it would bolt at the sound of a twig snapping. Now it only tilts its head as if to say, interesting choice, before resuming its nap. Let's make a modern comparison. This is the prehistoric equivalent of your pets acting weird right before a thunderstorm or an earthquake. Modern humans notice when their cat suddenly stares into the distance like it sees ghosts, or when the family dog huddles in the bathroom for no apparent reason. Nature warns its creatures, sometimes loudly, sometimes subtly. And today feels like a subtle day. A monkey climbs down from a tree and wanders over to your water jug. He picks it up, inspects it, and sets it down gently. You watch in silence. He watches in silence. You both nod respectfully. The moment feels deeply meaningful, though you're not sure why. In the distance, a series of small birds explodes out of the grass all at once. Not in fear, but in coordinated consistency, like they received a memo. A few heartbeats later, a quiet rumble rolls beneath your feet. Just a tiny one, the kind that could easily be mistaken for your stomach, but wasn't your stomach this time. When you look back at the animals, every single one of them is already staring toward the lagoon, not panicking, not fleeing, just waiting. And in the stillness of their collective calm, you feel the subtle hum of nature shifting, the reminder that animals sense things long before humans decide to stop. pretending nothing is happening. Everyone gathers to discuss the increasingly soggy situation. Opinions range from "it's just a phase" to "the ocean is trying to evict us." No one has a solution. You take your place in the uneven circle of logs, baskets, and overturned fish crates that passes for a community forum. The meeting spot sits uncomfortably close to the new shoreline, close enough that waves keep interrupting the discussion with soft, passive-aggressive splashes. The elders pretend not to notice, which is exactly the energy that got the village into this mess. The oldest elder clears his throat and begins the meeting in the traditional way, by complaining loudly about something unrelated. He rants about the youth not respecting firewood, about disappearing baskets, about the slow moral decay of fishing technique. Then he gestures vaguely toward the water and says, "Also, the land is shrinking." Everyone nods solemnly, as though this is an acceptable summary of geological catastrophe. Another villager stands up, dripping wet from the waist down. He doesn't explain why he's wet, and you don't ask. He dramatically points at the water and declares, "It is rising." A wave immediately laps at his ankle, as if to confirm. He jumps back like the sea personally insulted him. A woman with a baby on her hip raises her hand. "Maybe," she says cautiously. "The sea is angry." Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Anger is a popular explanation for natural phenomena. Weather, illness, berry shortages, fire that goes out for no reason. Someone else suggests that perhaps the sea is not angry, just expressing boundaries. This phrasing is repeated thoughtfully, like the group is considering sending the ocean a fruit basket to apologize. You glance around. The entire village council consists of people who have never agreed on anything, ever. These are the same people who spent 3 days debating whether a coconut that washed ashore belonged to the community or the spirits. The spirits won, and no one has eaten coconut since. Today is no different. One fisherman insists the water isn't rising at all, but that the land is sinking. Another insists the land can't sink because land is the thing things stand on, which sounds logical until you remember his canoe capsizes 4 times a week. Someone proposes building barriers out of logs. Someone else points out the logs will float away immediately. Someone suggests moving inland. Someone else dramatically gasps and says, "But then who will speak to the sea?" No one asks the sea to speak, but here we are. The discussion drifts, much like your huts, into unrelated territory. A young hunter claims he saw the spirit of the water in a dream, and it said, "Move your houses." His uncle counters this by claiming he saw the spirit in a dream too, and the spirit said, "Stay exactly where you are and stop bothering me." The crowd is split evenly. Democracy in action. Let's make a modern comparison. This meeting feels exactly like a work meeting where everyone knows the building is on fire, but half the group insists it's just warm lighting, and the other half thinks the fire is part of the building's natural cycle. You want to stand up and shout, "The ocean is right there," but that feels rude. The elder with the loudest voice finally bangs a stick on the ground, the prehistoric equivalent of a gavel. "We must decide," he declares. "What is our plan?" The silence that follows is powerful, deafening, telling. Finally, someone says, "We could ignore it." Everyone nods with the relieved enthusiasm of people who desperately wanted that option. The meeting ends with no plan whatsoever. Everyone gets up, stretches, and casually pretends the water didn't creep several inches closer during the discussion. You watch as the villagers wander back to their huts, already chatting about dinner, gossip, and whose turn it is to repair the fishing baskets. The sea rolls in another wave. Closer now. No one notices, or rather, everyone chooses not to notice. You sigh, because deep down you know the truth. The water has already made its decision. The humans just haven't caught up. Your oldest cousin has the unofficial job of marking where the shoreline used to be. The marks are starting to look like the world's saddest measuring tape. It started as a simple hobby, a casual notch carved into the sand with a stick after last season's big tide. But then the tide kept coming and coming and coming. Now your cousin walks the shrinking beach each morning like a reluctant employee clocking in for a shift he didn't sign up for. His tool of choice? A stick so worn down it looks like it's been through 5 careers and 3 divorces. He jabs it into the sand, steps back, squints with the seriousness of a professional geologist, and says things like, "Yep, it moved again." These observations are met with solemn nods from anyone nearby, as if he has shared groundbreaking revelations about the universe. Let's talk about his technique. He paces in long, dramatic strides, dragging the stick behind him like a prophet, leaving cryptic messages for future archaeologists. Every few meters he stops, sighs loudly, and adds a new mark, just below yesterday's. The marks form an uneven ladder of existential dread, climbing steadily inland. If someone from the future ever excavates this coastline, they'll assume our entire settlement was documenting the slow-motion end of the world with the enthusiasm of a tired accountant. Your cousin mutters constantly as he works, not useful muttering, not scientific muttering, more like, "should have moved earlier." told them this would happen. This is why we can't have nice things. He delivers each line with the energy of a man narrating his own documentary. You follow him along the shore, the sand warm beneath your feet, and the air thick with salt and humidity. The waves lap at the newest mark as if erasing evidence. You can practically hear the sea whispering, "Try again." A group of children wander over to help. They do not help. They ask questions like, "Why is the water eating the land? And will my hut float? And what happens if the water eats us too?" Your cousin responds with a grunt that could mean anything from "good question" to "please leave me alone before I cry." Let's make a modern comparison. Imagine being the person in charge of tracking how many times your boss moves your desk closer to the exit each week. That's your cousin's job, except the boss is the ocean, the exit is the horizon, and the HR department does not exist. It's thankless, repetitive, slightly terrifying work, and yet someone has to do it. At least, according to your cousin, someone has to. He takes his job seriously. Too seriously. He's even developed a ritual for it. Every morning. 1. Walk the coastline. 2. Measure with the stick. 3. Shake his head with theatrical disappointment. 4. Announce loudly to no one, "This is unprecedented." It is not unprecedented. It is extremely precedented. But you let him have this. A few adults gather behind you, watching your cousin poke his stick into the sand with the conviction of a man trying to stop time through sheer personal irritation. One of the elders suggests carving deeper marks so they last longer. Another suggests building a stone marker. A third suggests ignoring the whole thing and letting nature do whatever nature does. The debate is lively, pointless, and somehow comforting. Meanwhile, your cousin places yet another mark, slightly higher up the beach, slightly more depressing than the last. He stands back, crosses his arms, and nods. The nod of a man who has confirmed his worst fears. The water is still being water. Then he turns to you solemnly and says, "We might have to move the huts." You look at the marks. You look at the waves. You look at your cousin, sweating, sand-covered, and visibly exhausted by the responsibility of being the village's only part-time hydrologist. He's right. Of course he's right. He's been right for weeks, but no one wants to say it. Instead, he drags his stick along the sand again, carving an extra mark for emphasis. His measuring tape of doom stretches on, a line of tiny warnings the ocean politely ignores. And as you watch him prepare tomorrow's problem today, you realize something. Even in a world shifting beneath your feet, people will still find comfort in documenting the inevitable. One sad little mark at a time. Word spreads of strange, perfectly arranged stones appearing at low tide, too heavy for anyone to move, too precise to be random. No one knows who built them, including you. Curiosity is contagious. Within hours, half the settlement is whispering excitedly, as if someone discovered a new kind of berry that doesn't poison at least one person a week. You're swept into a small group heading down the coast, trudging across sand still wet from the receding tide. The sun glints off shallow pools, turning them into tiny mirrors that insist on blinding you whenever possible. The air smells like salt, seaweed, and just a hint of mystery, the kind of atmospheric seasoning that could either mean ancient knowledge or dead crab. You follow the coastline until someone gasps dramatically, pointing ahead. There they are, large stones arranged in a crescent shape, some standing upright, others tilted in deliberate angles. They're half buried in wet sand, half kissed by foamy waves, and they do not belong here. Everyone stops, everyone stares, everyone pretends they're not terrified. Let's talk prehistoric architecture. You've built huts, you've seen fire pits, you've watched your cousin invent a leaning shelf that collapsed instantly. But this is different. The stones are huge, too huge to have been dragged by anyone in camp. They're shaped somehow, not carved exactly, but persuaded, smoothed in places where no natural erosion should have touched, and arranged in a pattern that whispers, "Someone came here with a plan." The elder with the loudest opinions steps forward, squints at the stones, and boldly declares, "Spirits." This is the same man who blamed spirits last week for losing his own sandals, which he later discovered sitting on his feet. Someone else proposes giants. Someone else proposes sea giants. Someone else proposes that the giants were also spirits because why not merge theories when confusion is high? A young boy pokes one of the stones. It doesn't move, not even a little. The boy looks offended, then impressed, then mildly frightened. You sympathize. You've felt all three of those emotions in the last 30 seconds. Let's make a modern comparison. This is the prehistoric version of stumbling across a massive abandoned building with no explanation, no signs, and no reasonable architectural permit. If this were the future, someone would post pictures online, argue about aliens for 3 weeks, and then email academics demanding answers. But here, you just stare, breathe, and pretend you understand rock behavior. You crouch near the stones, running your fingers across the wet surface. It's cold, smooth, and unexpectedly straight. Straight in a way nature rarely chooses. The tide creeps closer, licking the base of the nearest one with the same energy as a cat claiming territory. A woman suggests digging around the structures. This is met with immediate disagreement, because digging is hard, and no one wants to be the first person to disturb something that might curse the entire coastline. A man volunteers tentatively, then retracts his offer after realizing everyone is staring at him with the "please don't awaken something" face. Your cousin, the shoreline inspector, circles the stones, muttering to himself as if taking notes for a future lecture. He taps one rock with his stick. The stone does not care. The stone has seen things. You instantly regret bringing your cousin to a situation where dramatic pacing is required. One of the hunters makes a suggestion so bold it silences the entire group. Maybe other people built this. The silence that follows is enormous. Other people, not your clan, not spirits, not ocean giants or wandering deities, humans, strangers. The idea spreads through the group like a slow, creeping chill. If someone else built these stones, where are they now? Did they leave? Did they migrate? Did the rising waters chase them inland long before your people felt the first whisper of change? You glance inland, imagining unknown groups living in forests or hills, building things your settlement couldn't dream of. Then you glance toward the sea, calm, glassy, deceptive, and you wonder if the ocean swallowed their work the same way it's swallowing yours. A wave rushes in, swirling around your ankles. The tide is returning. The stones, your mystery, your puzzle, your uneasy answer to questions no one asked, begin to slip beneath the water again, slowly, silently, as if they were never meant to be seen. Your cousin marks the spot with a stick. Of course he does. And as you walk back toward camp, one thought follows you like a shadow. If those stones belong to people who came before you, how much time do you have before the sea takes everything again? The lagoon rises unexpectedly while you're busy thinking about lunch. Suddenly you're underwater, flapping your limbs like a prehistoric washing machine. One moment you're standing in ankle-deep water, minding your business, contemplating whether roasted fish tastes better with or without that crunchy mystery layer. The next moment, whoosh, the lagoon decides to practice upward mobility and drags you into a surprise swimming lesson. You do not recall signing up for this, you do not recall volunteering, and you certainly do not recall consenting to be submerged before noon. You surface with a dramatic gasp that sounds less heroic and more like someone trying to inhale half the lagoon at once. Water streams down your face. Your hair flattens tragically. You flail in several directions, none of which appear to be up. Let's talk about your swimming technique. You don't have one. Your people don't have one. Swimming is not a cultural skill. Swimming is something that happens to you, usually against your will, like taxes, but wetter. You try to steady yourself, but the sandy bottom has disappeared beneath your feet. You windmill your arms in circles so large they could disrupt local weather patterns. Your legs thrash with the frantic energy of someone attempting to stomp out a fire, while also having a small emotional breakdown. A nearby fisherman watches with the blank expression of a man who has seen this exact scenario unfold multiple times and no longer finds it surprising. He calls out, "Relax your limbs," which is both helpful and deeply insulting, considering your limbs are currently in open rebellion. A small wave slaps your face. You slap it back. This does nothing. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like falling into a swimming pool unexpectedly, except instead of a lifeguard, you have a fisherman with questionable advice. And instead of chlorine, you're gulping organic, unfiltered seawater seasoned with microscopic life forms that will absolutely cause stomach trouble later. You try kicking your legs in a coordinated way, but your kicks resemble the erratic flops of a startled goat. Somehow, though, instinct kicks in. You angle your body forward, you paddle, you gasp, you spit out a small shell. Progress. Meanwhile, two children are watching from the shallows with the delighted expressions of people who find your suffering educational. One of them shouts, "Kick harder!" The other shouts, "You look like a crab having a dream." You are too busy trying not to die to respond. Your arms finally find a rhythm. A clumsy, desperate, mildly embarrassing rhythm, but a rhythm nonetheless. The lagoon's warm water swirls around you, pushing and pulling with gentle force, like nature trying to cradle you while also aggressively disciplining you. You begin drifting toward a calm patch of water. Your breathing steadies. The panic subsides. For the first time, you feel your body float, not well, not gracefully, but definitely more than before. You glance back at the shore. Several adults pretend not to be watching. They are absolutely watching. One of them holds a woven basket over his head like a parasol, shading himself comfortably as you struggle for survival. He gives you an encouraging thumbs up. You consider throwing water at him. A soft breeze crosses the lagoon, carrying the smell of salt and wet reeds. The water glitters in the sunlight, shimmering like broken glass laid gently on the surface. For a moment, a small, quiet, improbable moment, you stop flailing and simply move with it. It's peaceful, terrifying, but peaceful. Eventually you reach a shallow area where your toes finally brush the sandy floor. The relief is so overwhelming you nearly cry. You stand up, dripping, panting, hair plastered to your forehead in prehistoric fashion. The fisherman gives you a slow nod. You swam, he says. It is both an observation and a miracle. You crawl onto the shore, coughing out the remaining lagoon water, which tastes like salt, silt, and a questionable amount of biological activity. The children applaud enthusiastically. The adults pretend to have known you could do it all along. And as you lie on the warm sand, chest rising and falling, you realize something. You didn't learn to swim today because you wanted to. You learned to swim because the lagoon decided you were ready. And when nature forcibly enrolls you in swimming class, you pass, or you don't get the chance to complain. You join a shellfish gathering group who assure you this is safe, delicious, and absolutely not poisonous. Their confidence is misplaced. The group consists of 3 elders, one overexcited teenager, and a toddler who is far too enthusiastic about picking up things that pinch. You immediately regret coming, but you are already ankle-deep in tidal sludge, so turning back would require more dignity than you currently possess. The beach smells like seaweed, mud, wet sand, and danger. The tide has pulled back just enough to reveal clusters of promising shells wedged between rocks. They glisten in the sunlight like nature's tiny booby traps. "Grab the big ones," one of the elders says. "The small ones taste like disappointment." You have no idea how to tell the difference, so you pretend you understand and start collecting anything that looks vaguely edible, vaguely not moving, and vaguely unlikely to ruin your week. Let's talk prehistoric shellfish cuisine. It's a gamble, always. There is no guidebook, no allergy chart, no "is this safe to eat" quiz. You rely entirely on vibes. You boil things until they stop being alarming. You roast things until they stop hissing. You squint at things and hope your stomach is feeling brave. Today, your stomach is decidedly not brave. As you gather the shells, the teenager gives you a lecture on the ancient art of selecting prime shellfish, which is impressive given that shellfish selection was invented roughly 6 minutes ago. He taps each shell with exaggerated authority. Hollow, bad. Solid, good. This one smells weird, but in a good way. You decide not to ask for clarification. Eventually, your hands are full of mollusks that all look like they might contain a nutritious meal or an urgent medical event. You trudge back to camp, hoping the fire will somehow purify your questionable collection. Your family's fire, moody as always, decides to be volcanic today. Perfect. The elders dump the shellfish into a clay pot filled with seawater. The pot instantly bubbles like a witch's cauldron. Steam rises. A terrible smell emerges. Someone coughs. A bird flies overhead and immediately changes direction. You crouch near the pot, poking at the shells with a stick. They clack ominously. The toddler tries to grab one, and 3 adults lunge simultaneously to stop him, proving the danger is indeed real. A few shells pop open with tiny explosive cracks. "That means they're ready," an elder declares confidently. You're not convinced. You've heard the same elder say things like, "That fever means your spirit is exercising, and if you ignore the wound will ignore you." Still, you follow instructions. You hold a steaming shell in your hands and pry it open. Inside is a small pale blob of something. It jiggles. You hesitate. The elder gestures impatiently, urging you to eat. You take a tentative bite. Let's make a modern comparison. It's like chewing a warmed eraser dipped in seawater and optimism. But then, the flavor opens up. Salty, rich, surprisingly satisfying. Somehow, against all odds, it tastes good. You take another bite, and another. You may survive this, after all. Around the fire, everyone slurps, chews, groans, and occasionally spits something back out with violent rejection. It's a communal experience, a mixture of delight, regret, and gastrointestinal foreshadowing. One shellfish tastes buttery and perfect. Another tastes like it crawled out of the ocean specifically to ruin your life. A third one tries to pinch your lip on the way in. But in the glow of the fire, with the sea breeze warm on your skin, and the crackle of shells popping in the pot, the moment feels almost peaceful. Everyone eats together, talks together, suffers together. The toddler proudly holds up a shell, as if he personally invented the concept of food. The elders debate whether the dish needs more seawater, less seawater, or the same amount of seawater prepared with more emotional intention. You sit back, watching the fading sunlight paint the sky in pinks and golds. Your stomach rumbles once, a mild warning shot. But for the moment you ignore it. You survived the shellfish challenge. Mostly, probably. And as you lick the salty taste from your fingers, feeling the fire's warmth drift into your chest, you realize prehistoric cooking isn't about flavor. It's about luck, about boldness, about eating things that absolutely shouldn't be eaten, and pretending you enjoyed them so the group doesn't lose faith. Tonight, you lived dangerously. And you lived. One morning your favorite tree is shorter, not because it shrank, but because the ground around it didn't feel like staying put. You stand there blinking at it, waiting for your brain to offer a reasonable explanation. Maybe the tree is tired. Maybe it decided to sit down. Maybe trees have bad posture too. But no. The trunk is the same, the leaves are the same, the bend in the branch you used to hang baskets from is the same. The only thing that's changed is the land beneath it, which appears to have slipped, lowered, melted into itself like a sulking child. You poke the ground with your toe. It feels soft, wetter than usual, like bread dough that someone kneaded too aggressively and then gave up on halfway through. You squat down and press your hand into it. The soil squishes, cold and damp, rising between your fingers in a way that suggests it is no longer committed to its responsibilities. Let's talk about stable terrain. You've always assumed the land was, by nature, reliable, solid, stationary, non-debatable. It's the one thing in your life that shouldn't move. But here on the Sunda Shelf, a landscape slowly drowning in the aftermath of melting ice age glaciers, the land is starting to act more like a poorly made mattress, lumpy, unpredictable, and vaguely insulting. You circle the tree, trying to calculate how much shorter it is. A handspan? 2? Enough that the world feels subtly wrong, the way it does when someone moves all your belongings 2 centimeters to the left. A few villagers gather behind you. Someone gasps. Someone whispers, "The ground is sagging." Someone else suggests maybe the tree bent out of modesty. You ignore that person. The eldest elder steps forward, squints, and goes very quiet. This is notable because elders rarely go quiet. Silence is their most alarming communication method. He kneels, presses the soil with his palm, and nods grimly. The land is softening. Softening is not what you want the land to do. Land should harden, hold, support. Softening is what food does before it rots, or what driftwood does before it sinks, or what your resolve does when someone asks you to help rebuild a hut. A light breeze moves through the canopy, shaking loose a few leaves that drift down onto the newly lowered earth. You watch them fall and disappear into the wet soil as if the ground has developed an appetite. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like waking up one morning and finding your entire house an inch lower than it was yesterday. Not dramatically, just noticeably. Enough to wonder if you slept too long or gravity is playing favorites. Enough to make you question your flooring, your foundation, your future. A child pokes the sunken patch with a stick. He loses half the stick in the muck. Everyone exhales sharply. Someone mutters, "The earth is swallowing things." Someone else mutters back, "Maybe we upset it." A third person counters, "We upset everything." The murmurs spread. Fear, mild and creeping, begins to tighten around the group, like a cool mist rising from the lagoon. Your cousin, the waterline inspector, who is already at maximum daily stress, arrives breathless, looks at the tree, and immediately drops into the sand in despair. "I knew it," he groans. "First the sea, now the land. What's next? The sky?" You pat him on the shoulder, but he is inconsolable. His job depends on land behaving normally. At this rate, he'll have to invent a second stick, one to measure vertical loss as well as horizontal. You wander a little farther inland, and the signs multiply. A cluster of bushes looks slightly tilted. A stone fire pit has sunk unevenly, like it's trying to sink through the crust of the earth in search of a quieter, less demanding lifestyle. Even a patch of wildflowers appears lower, their petals drooping as if embarrassed by the situation. The elders call for yet another emergency meeting, but everyone already feels what the truth is. The land beneath your village is tired. Tired of being soaked. Tired of pretending it's not sinking. Tired of holding history together with muddy optimism. As you turn back toward camp, the tree stands quietly behind you, shorter, humbler, a reluctant messenger of change. And deep in your chest, you sense the message clearly. If the land is giving up ground, you'll soon have to give up the land. Late at night, you hear something like a low groan under the soil. The older villagers call it the land adjusting. You call it a reason to move inland immediately. You sit up in your bedding, heart thudding, eyes wide in the dim glow of dying embers. The sound rises again, a deep, throaty rumble that vibrates the earth beneath your palms. It's not loud, but it's unmistakable. A sound from below, a sound with weight, a sound that suggests The world is clearing its throat before delivering bad news. You freeze, you listen, you consider pretending it didn't happen. A nearby hut rustles as someone else bolts upright. Another rumble rolls through the soil, like a massive creature shifting in its sleep deep underground. You think briefly about climbing a tree, then remember the trees are sinking too and decide to remain still. Let's talk about the land adjusting. The elders swear this happens all the time. The ground moves, the soil settles, the world breathes. They describe it with the blasé confidence of people who have outlived dozens of natural warnings simply by ignoring them. It's nothing, they say, just the earth stretching her legs. But tonight the earth sounds less like it's stretching its legs and more like it's cracking its knuckles menacingly. Another groan vibrates through the camp. A few dogs whimper softly and huddle closer together. The birds in the trees, normally a cacophony of early night chatter, go suddenly, frighteningly silent. The monkeys, who usually squabble until dawn, are frozen, eyes glowing faintly from the branches, staring at the ground as if waiting for it to open. You swallow hard, suddenly aware of how thin the line is between stable ground and unexpected pit. A soft breeze passes over the lagoon, carrying the scent of wet mud and churned earth. You hear a muffled slosh, the kind of shifting water sound that accompanies sudden land reshaping. Your imagination supplies helpful images, your entire hut sliding into the sea like a poorly secured raft. You push the thoughts away, but they push back. Let's make a modern comparison. This is the prehistoric version of hearing strange sounds in your basement at night. You tell yourself it's the pipes. You tell yourself it's the wind. You tell yourself it's the house settling. But deep down, you know, something is happening, and you would prefer it stopped until morning. A few villagers shuffle out of their huts, clutching torches. Their light flickers across damp sand and trembling reeds. You join them because communal fear is better than solitary fear. Everyone stands barefoot in a loose circle, staring at the dark soil beneath their feet. No one knows what to say. The silence is awkward, heavy, and punctuated only by another subterranean grumble. Finally, one elder clears his throat. "The earth is adjusting," he repeats with forced authority. It sounds less convincing when the ground immediately responds with a long, resonant groan that feels like it's aimed directly at him. Someone asks if the land is sinking again. Someone else asks if the ancestors are angry. Someone else asks if the ancestors are sinking. No one has answers. Your cousin, with the waterline inspector, barges into the gathering, wild-eyed and holding his stick like a sacred staff of geological truth. "This is not adjusting," he announces. "This is collapsing." He says it so loudly several people jump. An elder shushes him, but even the earth seems to agree with his assessment, as another vibration ripples beneath your toes. A toddler starts crying. A dog hides behind you. The birds remain eerily quiet, which feels like a bad omen. You kneel and place your palm flat against the ground. The soil is warm, too warm. Moisture beads around your fingers. The earth feels alive, not in a magical way, but in the way a stomach rumbles before something dramatic happens. A sudden crack snaps through the camp. Everyone gasps. A small fissure forms near the fire pit, barely wide enough to notice unless you're looking for it. And you are absolutely looking for it. People begin exchanging anxious glances. Someone whispers, "Maybe we should prepare to move." Another replies, "Maybe we should start running now." You stare at the dark line crawling slowly across the ground. It's tiny but undeniable. The land is shifting, bending, yielding under forces you can't see and definitely can't negotiate with. And in that moment, you realize the truth. The ground is no longer a guarantee. It's a suggestion that it might not be here tomorrow. The oldest people in the village begin sharing stories of past floods. Their advice includes phrases like, "Never trust a calm tide," and "Water remembers." You sit in the center of the fire circle, listening as the elders settle into their nightly storytelling posture, which is mostly hunched shoulders, dramatic sighing, and clearing their throats louder than necessary. The fire crackles gently, throwing gold light onto their wrinkled faces, each one worn in the precise pattern of people who've spent far too long squinting at waves. Tonight's topic, how the sea is basically a living entity with a grudge. The eldest of the elders, a woman whose age is unknown and possibly unmeasurable, raises one bony finger and says, "Listen carefully, the sea has moods." Everyone nods gravely, as if the sea being moody is common knowledge. She continues, "Sometimes she gives, sometimes she takes, sometimes she pretends she's asleep while she creeps closer. Her eyes narrow at the shoreline like she's expecting it to lunge." Another elder adds, "A calm tide is the most dangerous tide." He says it with the intensity of someone who once misread a calm tide and still hasn't emotionally recovered. The stories begin flowing like, "Well, an impending flood. One elder recalls a time when the sea rolled in silently, no wind, no warning, and swallowed half their fishing racks. Another swears he saw the ocean pull back so far the lagoon floor was exposed, full of flopping fish who looked just as confused as the humans. Someone else chimes in, "Water remembers paths it once traveled." This is said with the certainty of a man who believes water keeps a diary. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like listening to grandparents describe weather patterns as if the clouds personally insulted them. Except here, the clouds might actually have. The elders begin arguing among themselves about which flood was worst. The great tide of my youth? No. The sneaky flood of the cold season? No. The one with all the crabs. You always exaggerate the crab flood. It was 3 crabs. They were large. You watch them debate, your eyes drifting toward the coastline, where a faint glimmer of moonlight reveals just how uncomfortably close the ocean now sits. Every wave seems to breathe in and out, like a creature contemplating its next move. Eventually, the eldest woman leans forward and says the line everyone has been waiting for. Water remembers. She explains that floods come back to places they've been before, that the sea retraces old borders, that it misses its ancient shape. You're not sure if this is poetic wisdom or an early attempt at describing post-glacial sea level rise, but either way, the vibe is unsettling. The fire pops. A dog whines softly. A gust of wind carries the heavy smell of brine through the camp. You feel goosebumps. Another elder describes how the sea once rose so suddenly that people had to climb trees to avoid being swept inland. He gestures toward the sinking trees nearby and adds, "Back then, the trees weren't giving up." Everyone murmurs in agreement. Someone else says, "The sea listens." Someone counters, "The sea doesn't care." Someone else suggests, "Maybe the sea cares too much." It's unclear which idea is more terrifying. Your cousin, the waterline inspector, sits quietly at the edge of the circle, hugging his stick. Each story seems to age him another 10 years. By the 4th tale, he looks ready to move inland by himself. More stories spill out. A boat swept away overnight. A cooking fire drowned mid-meal. A pile of fish vanishing as if plucked by invisible hands. A giant wave that rolled in so silently it was basically an aquatic burglar. You feel the ground beneath you subtly dampen as the nightly tide creeps higher. The elders finish with a final warning. When the sea gets quiet, she's thinking. You stare at the horizon. The sea is very, very quiet, and as the fire's glow reflects off the dark water, you understand what they meant. The ocean may not have a face, but tonight it has an expression, and it's studying your village with the patience of something ancient, vast, and preparing to reclaim what was once its own. A celebration is held to honor the ancestors. Dancing, drumming, and eating ensue, all blissfully unaware that this will be the last festival held at sea level. Festivals happen a few times a year, but this one feels different from the start. Brighter, louder, fuller. Maybe it's the warm air drifting off the lagoon, carrying the smell of roasted fish and sweet palm sap. Maybe it's the flicker of torches reflecting off the water, doubling the light, doubling the energy. Or maybe it's the fact that for one night no one is talking about sinking land, groaning earth, or the sea's suspiciously ambitious behavior. The entire settlement gathers in the clearing. Women weave flower crowns, children chase each other in chaotic circles, and elders argue over who gets the honor of lighting the ceremonial fire. You're handed a woven bracelet made from fresh reeds, still damp, still smelling faintly of river mud, and told it symbolizes continuity. You decide not to question it. The drummers begin first. Their rhythms echo through the clearing, deep and slow like a heartbeat. The beat rolls across the wet ground, across the huts, across the lagoon itself, where the water quivers in tiny ripples as if listening. Your people believe sound carries messages to the ancestors. You hope today's message is something like, "We're doing great," and not, "Please ignore the collapsing coastline." You join the dance when the circle forms. The steps are simple, more swaying than dancing really, but the energy is infectious. Hands clap, feet stomp, shoulders shake. The festival fire crackles, sending sparks swirling upward like tiny red insects fleeing into the night sky. Let's make a modern comparison. This is the prehistoric version of a block party, mixed with a cultural ceremony and just a dash of denial. The vibe is half, "We honor our ancestors," and half, "Let's forget nature is actively trying to evict us." The food arrives next. Roasted fish, charred tubers, honeycombed fruit, and a suspicious grey stew that everyone pretends to enjoy out of respect for the cook. Children run around with sticky fingers. Adults pass drinks in clay cups. The palm wine burns your throat in a pleasant way, like being scolded by someone who cares about you. Someone begins telling ancestor stories. Someone else interrupts them. Someone else sings loudly over both of them. It's all very on brand for your people. The drums speed up. Bodies move faster, lighter, freer. Someone grabs your wrist and pulls you into a new dance pattern, one that feels strangely complicated for a group that struggles to stack baskets evenly. You laugh, actually laugh, a sound that feels rare these days. The night wraps around you like a warm blanket. Soft air, firelight, the rhythmic thump of feet on earth that may or may not be stable. As the moon rises higher, its pale glow blends with the torches, turning the shoreline into a shimmering ribbon. The tide is creeping in, but no one notices. The festival has swallowed everyone's attention. The elders form a slow circle, shaking rattles made of dried gourds. Their voices rise in a chant so old no one remembers the original meaning. They throw handfuls of flower petals into the fire, sending fragrant pops into the air. You smell smoke, salt, blossoms, and the faint sweetness of fermenting fruit. One of the drummers suddenly collapses into laughter for no reason. Someone else starts dancing with a tree. A teenager climbs onto a rock and announces he is now chief of tides. The palm wine was apparently stronger this year, but even through the joy, there's an undercurrent, subtle, quiet, like the low hum you hear before a storm. You feel it when you step off the packed dirt and onto the softer ground near the shore. You feel it when you look toward the lagoon and see the water reflecting the firelight with unusual brightness, almost as if rising to watch. You catch the eye of your cousin, the waterline inspector, standing at the edge of the festivities. He's not dancing, he's not drinking, he's staring at the shoreline with the expression of someone mentally drafting evacuation plans. Then the drums crescendo, the dancers whirl, the fire roars, and for a moment, a perfect moment, everyone forgets. You forget. You let the warmth of the night settle into your bones. Because tomorrow the earth may groan, the land may sink, the sea may advance. But tonight you celebrate like the world isn't shifting beneath your feet. You step outside, and the calm lagoon you once bathed in now looks like the open sea. Waves roll in as if they finally received an invitation. The sight stops you mid-stride. You blink once, twice. You briefly consider going back inside and pretending you didn't see it, the way you sometimes ignore the first crack in a bowl so you don't have to acknowledge its impending doom. But no. The lagoon is unmistakably different. Gone is the gentle glassy surface where you used to wash your hands, your hair, and occasionally your dignity. In its place is a churning expanse of water with ambitions far beyond its previous job description. You step closer, sand cold under your feet, the air damp and salty in an unfamiliar way, sharper, heavier, almost ocean-strong. The waves crash against the shoreline with new confidence, rolling in like they've been promoted and are eager to show off. Let's talk about lagoons. A lagoon is supposed to be sheltered, quiet, calm, a watery friend. This is not that. This is a lagoon that saw an ocean brochure and decided to reinvent itself. A few villagers gather beside you, mouths open, eyes wide. Someone whispers, "It wasn't like this last night." Someone else adds, "It wasn't like this an hour ago." Another insists, "I had a dream this would happen," which is something they say every time anything happens. Your cousin, the waterline inspector who has had an emotionally devastating week, drops to his knees and presses his forehead to the damp sand. Not in reverence, in pure exhaustion. You stare at the water, it stares back. The waves curl and unfurl with slow, deliberate strength, as though they've been waiting patiently for the right moment to expand their office space. You take a step back as a wave slides farther up the beach than any wave should, washing over your toes. It's warm, too warm, the kind of warm that suggests the water has traveled a very long way and picked up gossip along the route. Let's make a modern comparison. This is the prehistoric equivalent of going to bed with a cute backyard puddle and waking up to find the Atlantic Ocean sitting on your porch, politely asking if you have a moment to talk about sea level rise. The entire shoreline has shifted. The sand has been reshaped. The familiar landmarks, sticks, shells, random rocks you assigned sentimental value to, are gone, swallowed by the new surf. The tree line seems closer, as if the forest is backing away from the scene, pretending it was never involved. A dog barks nervously at the waves. A child tries to mimic the sound of crashing water and is immediately told to stop because it feels too accurate. Even the birds circle cautiously, staying farther inland than usual, wings beating in careful arcs. You watch as another wave crests higher than the last, spilling foam across sand that has never known foam before. It feels unreal, like nature is expanding the boundaries of your map while you watch. The elders shuffle out of their huts, squinting at the transformed lagoon. One murmurs, "The sea has taken back her breath." Another says, "She remembers where she flowed before." A third simply mutters, "Well, That's not ideal. The drumming from last night's festival still echoes faintly in your ears, and for a moment you wonder if the ancestors heard your celebration and decided to send a sign, not a gentle, symbolic sign, but a very wet, very literal one. A fisherman steps forward with the authority of someone who definitely does not have authority and announces, "We should test it." He wades in up to his knees, then immediately runs back out when a wave pushes him off balance. The ocean does not want to be tested. It wants to advance. The realization settles over the group like a cold mist. The lagoon isn't changing back. This is not a mood swing. This is a transformation. Your home's protective barrier, that soft stretch of water that once cushioned you from the open sea, has vanished. What lies before you now is the vastness, the deep, the endless, and for the first time you sense clearly what the land, the water, the trees, and the animals have been whispering for weeks. The ocean is coming, and it has stopped asking permission. Your greatest cultural treasure is a giant wooden bowl. People flee carrying children, tools, and baskets. You carry the bowl. You have no regrets. To be fair, it's not just any bowl. This bowl has history. It's been used for weddings, funerals, feasts, arguments, reconciliations, and one memorable occasion when it doubled as a baby bathtub. It has held fish, berries, fermented drinks, questionable soups, and once, briefly, a disgruntled raccoon. The bowl is older than most of the elders, sturdier than most of the huts, and considerably more reliable than the fire. So when the waves start invading the settlement in earnest, when the shouting begins and people scatter like startled birds, your hands go immediately to the bowl, not your bedding, not your tools, not your personal belongings. The bowl. Let's talk priorities. In modern terms, this is the prehistoric equivalent of running into a burning house to save a family heirloom instead of your phone or wallet. Except the bowl is your wallet, your storage system, your serving platter, your ceremonial centerpiece, and your emotional support container. You hoist the massive thing onto your hip. It's large enough to block half your view and heavy enough to guarantee regret in your lower back by sundown. But still, you march forward. Around you, chaos spirals. A woman sprints by carrying 2 children under her arms like squirming sacks of grain. Behind her, a man frantically gathers spears, ropes, baskets, and anything else that isn't nailed down. Someone shouts, "Get the fish racks!" Someone else shouts, "Forget the fish racks!" A third person shouts, "What about the stew?" No one answers him. The lagoon-turned ocean surges inland, with a roar that drowns out half the panic. The waves slap against hut walls, sending baskets, shells, and bits of woven mat swirling into a watery ballet of domestic tragedy. A clay pot floats by, still containing half a root vegetable. You salute it silently as it drifts away. Meanwhile, you push through knee-deep water, gripping the bowl like it's the beating heart of civilization, which honestly, it kind of is. If someone tried to take it from you, you would absolutely fight them. Let's make a modern comparison. It feels like evacuating during a natural disaster and deciding the one thing you must rescue is a fragile family punch bowl because it has been at every holiday since forever. But instead of a punch bowl, it's a monstrous wooden basin big enough to bathe a goat. You stumble over submerged rocks, the bowl awkwardly tilting with each step. It catches the wind like a sail, nearly dragging you sideways. A child watching this points and yells, "You look funny!" You do not have time to process this insult. The water is rising. A wave breaks against your waist, pushing you back a step. You brace yourself. Your cousin, the overworked waterline inspector, appears beside you, soaked and wild-eyed. He doesn't question why you're carrying the bowl. He simply nods, as though this is exactly the kind of decision he expected from you. Together, you make your way toward higher ground, where the others are gathering. Some villagers drag salvaged possessions. Others carry firewood, baskets of flour dust, or bundles of tools. A pair of elders escort the ceremonial drum, holding it as delicately as if it were a newborn. When the group sees you, someone gasps and shouts, "You saved it!" A cheer rises, a relieved, breathless cheer, because somehow, irrationally, saving the bowl feels like saving a piece of yourselves. The elders rush over and place gentle hands on the rim, whispering gratitude as if you rescued a living ancestor. One of them examines the bowl for damage. None, of course none. The bowl is invincible. You set it down on dry ground and collapse beside it, chest heaving, legs shaking, heart pounding. People continue streaming up from the shoreline, dripping, panting, clutching what little they saved. But the mood shifts when they see the bowl sitting calmly among them. Whole, familiar, unbroken. It feels like a promise, a reminder, a ridiculous yet comforting symbol of identity. The sea can take huts, it can take nets, it can take your favorite tree, 3 fire pits, and half the coastline, but not the bowl. And as you lean your head back, breathing deeply, muscles trembling from the effort, you realize something. Sometimes survival is practical, sometimes survival is instinctual, and sometimes survival is carrying a giant wooden bowl, because losing it would mean losing something far bigger than an object. You did the right thing, no regrets. With the water pursuing your homeland, like an overly attached ex, you and the others begin the long walk toward higher ground. You take one last look at the shoreline, or what used to be the shoreline, and watch as another wave curls over the top of your favorite cooking spot. It's gone now, officially claimed. The sea didn't even send a thank you note. Behind you, the village is a hive of movement, everyone carrying something: tools, fire embers, bundles of food, crying babies, baskets of roots, and in one notable case, a pet frog in a clay pot. The sky is a hazy blue, the morning sun filtering through a thin veil of mist that rises from the wet ground. The air feels heavier inland, thicker with humidity and uncertainty, as though the land itself is bracing for your footsteps. You sling your belongings over your shoulder and join the line of villagers stretching like a long, uneven snake into the forest. The forest greets you with a chorus of sounds: frogs chirping, monkeys calling, birds complaining loudly about the intrusion. The path is narrow, winding between tree roots that twist like ancient hands. Mud squelches with every step, clinging to your ankles, reaching up your legs as if begging you to return to your sinking home. But no one turns back. Let's make a modern comparison. This is the prehistoric version of moving house during a natural disaster. Except there is no house, no road, no moving truck, and no guarantee that wherever you're headed isn't also trying to disappear underwater. The group moves slowly, cautiously. Children walk with wide eyes, gripping their parents' hands. Dogs trot beside the group, stopping occasionally to sniff the air like tiny, furry disaster analysts. Elders at the front of the line argue about which way the ancestors would have walked, even though none of them can agree on who the ancestors were, much less their architectural preferences. Your cousin, the waterline inspector, still clutching his stick like a badge of trauma, marches with a grim determination. Every so often, he stops, looks back toward the vanished coastline, and mutters the same thing. "I knew it. I knew it." The path grows steeper. Your breath grows heavier. Sweat collects on your forehead, mixing with the dust that clings to your cheeks. You smell earth, bark, crushed leaves, and the faint, fading scent of salt being left behind. The sound of waves grows softer until it's nothing more than a ghost humming somewhere in the distance. Halfway up the ridge, the group stops to rest. Cloaks are spread across rocks. Water gourds are passed around. Someone tries to start a fire, but the humidity laughs in their face. The elders sit on a fallen log, legs dangling, and begin debating whether the ancestors walked this exact path or one slightly to the left. You give them privacy for their disagreement. You sit beneath a large tree whose roots cling to the earth like a creature refusing to let go. For a moment you envy it. You take a long sip from your gourd and feel the warm water settle in your stomach. Around you the forest rustles gently, a sound that should be comforting but feels watchful, as if the land is assessing its new tenants. Then, after a short rest, the migration continues. The forest opens onto a broad rise overlooking the land below, and the view steals your breath. What once was a village, a lagoon, a stretch of familiar coastline, is now a shimmering, restless sheet of water creeping steadily inland. The sea has claimed it all: huts, trees, footpaths, memories. The elders fall silent. Children stop fidgeting. Even the birds seem to pause their songs. It is one thing to fear the rising water. It is another to see it. The group moves again, this time more urgently, higher, farther, toward land that feels solid under your feet. Land that has not yet begun to sink or sigh or groan. You grip the straps of your pack tighter. Your legs ache. Your shoulders burn. But for the first time in days, you have direction, a destination, a plan that doesn't involve staring anxiously at the horizon. The great inland migration has begun, not because you wanted it, not because you were prepared for it, but because the world itself shifted and left you no choice but to shift with it. And as the forest swallows you in green shadows and birdsong, you realize something. You're not just leaving a village, you're leaving an era. You climb hills newly exposed by shifting land, steep ridges that feel out of place, like the earth is revealing secrets it had been saving. The hills weren't here last season, at least not like this. They've risen in odd, abrupt angles, as if the land shrugged once, a big tectonic sigh, and created entirely new topography out of sheer frustration. The slopes are too sharp, too fresh, too raw. The soil crumbles under your feet in loose, sandy dribbles, like the earth is still deciding what shape it wants to be. You plant your foot on the first incline and immediately regret it. The hill is steep, the mud is slick, and your legs are already protesting because they were not consulted in this decision. The villagers form a line behind you, muttering, panting, occasionally falling over. Children scramble up like little goats. Elders are hauled along like sacred cargo. Even the dogs seem unsure about the incline, their paws scrabbling loudly. The air changes as you climb, cooler, sharper, filled with the earthy scent of freshly shifted soil. Roots hang exposed from the hillside, dangling like someone peeled back the skin of the world. They sway slightly in the breeze, whispering in the way roots do when they're suddenly unemployed. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like discovering a new staircase in your house that definitely wasn't there yesterday. You stand at the bottom thinking, should I climb this? Should anyone? But everyone else is climbing and your options are limited, so you go up too, trying to pretend this is normal. You reach a flatter stretch and catch your breath. Below you, the forest spreads out like a green quilt. Rumpled, uneven, stitched together with tangled vines and patches of wet earth. You can see where the land has shifted, where the soil has slid, where the ground has warped into strange, unnatural folds. The elders insist these hills are a sign. The land is rising to meet us, one says confidently. Another says, the ancestors are making a staircase. A third says, no, the land is confused. You feel the third one is the most accurate. Your cousin, the waterline inspector, now involuntarily promoted to topography analyst, crouches and digs his fingers into the dirt. He looks haunted. This soil used to be underwater, he murmurs. This is sea floor mud. His voice sounds like someone forced to revise their entire career path. Higher up, the wind picks up. It whistles through the exposed roots, threads through the tall grass, tugs at your hair. The higher you climb, the more the land feels like it's shifting beneath you. Not dangerously, but restlessly, like it hasn't settled into its new identity yet. The hill steepens again. The group groans collectively. A few people crawl on all fours, dignity abandoned like yesterday's baskets. You cling to a protruding root for balance. It snaps. You tumble forward, catch yourself on a rock, and pretend it didn't happen. No one saw, except the teenager, and the dog, and an elder who definitely snorted. At the crest of the hill, the view opens like a curtain being drawn back, and the world looks wrong. The lagoon, your lagoon, is now a shimmering extension of the sea, its calm heart replaced with restless waves. The coastline curves inland like a bitten apple. The forest you just walked through glistens with lingering water. You can see where the land collapsed, where it sloped, where it cracked. Parts of the world are missing. Other parts have grown. The hills beneath your feet, the ones you're standing on right now, weren't meant to be here yet. They are young, raw, exposed, born from a planet rearranging itself in real time. A hush falls over the group. Even the children stop talking. It's one thing to know the land is sinking. It's another to stand on new land that shouldn't exist yet. You feel small. You feel ancient. You feel like you've just witnessed the earth flip through pages of time too quickly. And somewhere in the distance, the sea roars, not angrily, but hungrily, as if reminding you that it isn't done rewriting the map. You help construct huts on higher terrain that seems stable, until it isn't. The ground wobbles like cooled jelly. You plant your feet wide, trying to channel the confidence of someone who knows how to build on this kind of surface. You do not. No one does. The new land feels wrong, young, unsettled, still adjusting to its own existence. Every time you press a pole into the dirt, the soil trembles like it's giggling or protesting. You choose to believe it's giggling. Protesting is too stressful. The elders insist this is perfect rebuilding land. They say this while sinking up to their ankles. One elder steps firmly and leaves a footprint that instantly fills with groundwater. He nods as though this is a promising sign. You wonder if the elders have decided optimism counts as engineering. Let's talk prehistoric construction. It's already an adventure on normal land. Now you're doing it on terrain that behaves like living pudding. You and a few others begin hauling logs, long, heavy tree trunks stripped of their branches. Every time you set one down, it bounces slightly, then tilts, then chooses its own direction. With the chaotic energy of a toddler learning to walk, you chase it twice before finally pinning it with a rock. A woman beside you tries digging a post hole. She gets about 3 handfuls deep before the dirt collapses back in on itself with a wet sigh. She gives up and pretends that was the plan all along. Children run around gleefully, stomping in the wobbliest patches. Dogs follow them, convinced this is a new game? You watch a child jump on a soft patch of earth, and the entire section ripples outward like someone shook a hide blanket stretched across a drum. Everyone pretends that's normal. You set the first wall pole upright. It wobbles. You steady it. It wobbles again. You sigh. Your cousin, the ever-suffering waterline inspector turned temporary soil expert, approaches, squints at the quivering ground, and mutters, "I hate it." Then he wanders off to stare at something else he hates. The forest around you hums with insects. Birds shout overhead. A warm breeze skims across the new ridgeline, ruffling your hair and carrying the smell of fresh earth, crushed roots, and faint brine. You wipe sweat from your forehead and adjust your grip on the next support beam. When you push it into the soil, the ground responds with a moist, offended squelch. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like building a house on top of a waterbed. Every step changes the angle of everything. Every tool sinks. Every confident declaration, "This will hold," is immediately disproven by the land shifting half a finger's width to the left. At some point, the elders announce a structural breakthrough. You gather around eagerly. The breakthrough is a slightly less wobbly patch of ground. Everyone cheers anyway. Work continues. Someone finds a stretch of firmer soil and claims it as prime real estate. Another person tries to sneeze near their stake line to claim some too. Turf disputes escalate quickly. A teenage builder attempts to demonstrate a new anchoring method and ends up knee-deep in mud, shouting, "This is fine." His mother disagrees loudly. You manage to erect one wall of your hut, 3 poles tied together with vines, leaning at questionable angles like they've given up on posture altogether. The roof frame goes on next, sagging gently. Everyone assures you it will stiffen over time. You privately doubt this, but appreciate the emotional support. By midday, half the structures are up. Up meaning identifiable as huts if you squint. The ground gives a little bounce each time someone walks past, causing the walls to wiggle subtly like they're alive. The huts seem to be dancing. No one acknowledges this. As the sun dips lower, the settlement begins to resemble a community again. A wiggly, precarious, gravity-challenged community. But a community nonetheless. Smoke from the first cooking fire curls upward in thin silver ribbons, drifting into the twilight. A baby laughs. Someone sings. The earth wobbles gently beneath it all, unsure of its role, but trying its best. You step back, wipe your hands on your legs, and admire your work. It leans, it sways. It looks like one strong breeze could send it into early retirement, but it's home, or the beginning of one. And as you settle onto a nearby rock, exhausted but strangely hopeful, you realize even on shaky new soil, humans rebuild. Even when the ground beneath them trembles, they plant poles and tie vines and call it shelter. It may wobble, it may sink, it may collapse tomorrow. But for today, it stands. You find a cave with strange markings on its walls, symbols that look suspiciously advanced. No one in your group claims responsibility. You stand at the mouth of the cave, staring into a darkness that looks entirely too dramatic for this hour of the morning. The entrance yawns wide, fringed with hanging ferns that sway gently as if whispering warnings. The air spilling out of the opening is cool, damp, and scented with something earthy, old, and a little bit judgmental, like the cave itself knows things you don't. Behind you, the villagers gather in a loose cluster. Someone mutters, "This wasn't here last moon." Someone else mutters back, "It was. You just never look at anything." A third person pokes the cave wall with a stick and announces, "Feels like rock." The scientific community is stunned. You take a cautious step inside. The temperature drops instantly. Your skin prickles. The floor is smooth, unusually smooth, as if water once flowed through here with purpose, or some meticulous creature polished it for reasons beyond your comprehension. Your footsteps echo faintly, bouncing around the chamber like lost thoughts. Let's talk prehistoric caves. They are usually messy, cramped, loud with dripping water, and decorated in the accidental style of whatever dust sticks. This one is different, too spacious, too deliberate, too intentional. You move deeper, and the walls begin to reveal themselves. Shapes emerge in the dimness, carved, not scratched, arranged, not random. You bring your torch closer, and the symbols glow faintly in the flickering light. Spirals, grids, radiating lines, patterns that seem mathematical, or at least structured in a way that suggests someone once had a very organized mind. Someone behind you gasps. Someone else whispers, "This is advanced." Someone else whispers, "What's advanced?" No one answers. You study one spiral. It twists with perfect spacing, each line carved with the steady hand of someone who definitely wasn't trying to draw while being chased by a wild boar. Your people carve symbols sometimes, simple marks, stick figures, dots, handprints, but nothing like this. Nothing this deliberate, persistent, or symmetrical. Your cousin, the exhausted waterline inspector turned soil analyst, turned provisional archaeologist, steps in beside you, eyes wide. "We didn't make these," he says, as if expecting the cave itself to confirm. The cave does not confirm, but it also does not deny. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like moving into a new apartment and discovering an elaborate, cryptic mural behind the wallpaper. You don't know whether to be impressed or concerned, so you settle on both. A young hunter runs his fingers gently over the carvings. "Feels old," he says. "Older than us." An elder leans in. "Everything feels older than us." You suspect the elder is right, but not helpful. Further inside, the cave narrows into a chamber with a domed ceiling. Dark mineral streaks glisten like veins of obsidian. More symbols cover the walls, arranged in vertical columns that resemble writing or counting or instructions no one can read anymore. Someone suggests the ancestors made them. Someone else suggests strangers made them. Someone else, unhelpfully, suggests giant cave worms made them. You ignore that person. The air thickens as you press deeper into the chamber. Your torch flickers, casting wild shadows that dance across the ancient markings. It feels like stepping inside a memory, one that does not belong to your people. Suddenly, a gust of air sweeps through the cave, cold enough to raise goosebumps. The torch sputters dangerously. A few villagers scream. You do not scream. You make a dignified sound of alarm that absolutely does not count as screaming. The cave exhales again. A long, slow breath. You glance back toward the entrance. The others are already retreating. No one wants to be the first to say it, but everyone is thinking it. This cave is older than your settlement, older than the coastline that drowned, older than the land you now stand on, and the people who carved these markings, whoever they were, stood exactly where you are standing now. You trail your fingertips across the nearest symbol. It's smooth, cold, deeply etched, a message across time, but unreadable. As you leave the cave, stepping back into the warm sunlight, a strange sensation settles in your chest. Part awe, part fear, part electric realization. Your people are not the first to lose a world, and they will not be the last. While exploring your new territory, you encounter another group, people who look familiar but dress differently, speak oddly, and stare at you like you're the strange one. You stop mid-stride, frozen like a startled deer wearing a guilty expression. The group ahead of you, 5, maybe 6 people, stands in a loose semicircle, equally still, equally stunned. Birds stop chirping, leaves stop rustling, even the wind seems to pause as if waiting to see how this unfolds. They look human, definitely human, but not your humans. Their clothing is the first thing you notice, woven, but in a style you've never seen. The fibers are dyed in deep earth tones, rust red, charcoal black, a surprising stripe of bright yellow. Someone over there figured out color theory and is showing off. Their hair is braided tightly, intricately, the kind of braiding that suggests hours of patience and possibly a strong cultural need to avoid loose strands at all costs. Their jewelry, carved bone pendants, polished shell discs, glints in the filtered sunlight cutting through the canopy. One wears a necklace that looks suspiciously too polished for someone living this far from the sea. They speak softly among themselves, voices rising and falling in a rhythm that makes sense to them but sounds to you like someone trying to sing and complain at the same time. One points at you, another tilts their head, a third squints like you're a suspiciously shaped tree. You decide to wave. This is a mistake. The shortest of them gasps and steps behind the tallest, clutching their arm, like you just attempted a magical ritual. The tallest one steps forward anyway, lifting a hand cautiously, palm outward. The universal sign for stay calm. We're trying to figure out if you're weird. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like walking your dog in a new neighborhood and seeing a family across the street staring at you as if you're the one who moved into their house by accident. You clear your throat and try greeting them in your language. They respond by using their language, which sounds like your language if someone took all the familiar words out, shook them in a jar, and replaced them with uncertain vowels and concerned glottal stops. They speak quickly, confidently, absolutely sure that they are communicating. You nod as if you understand. You absolutely do not. A woman from their group steps closer, examining you like one might examine a peculiar vegetable at the market. Curious, cautious, slightly judging, she touches your shoulder, then pulls her hand back as if surprised it didn't melt. She says something that sounds like, "Ha, no?" You respond with something that sounds like a choking squirrel. Tension breaks. She laughs. Then the entire group laughs. You're not sure if they're amused with you or at you, but you're relieved they're not brandishing spears. One of them offers you a piece of dried fruit, dark, sticky, slightly suspicious. It tastes good, sweet, tart, complex. You try to show your appreciation by smiling. They seem pleased that you didn't die. Your cousin, who followed you reluctantly, and is deeply out of his emotional range, arrives and freezes at the sight of strangers. His face cycles through all 5 stages of panic, ending on concerned squirrel. The strangers stare at him. He stares back. You introduce him with a gesture. The strangers nod politely, assuming this gesture means something coherent. One of the men from the group points inland, making broad, sweeping motions and tapping his chest. He repeats the gesture. You turn to your cousin. He shrugs helplessly. The stranger tries again, slower, as if that will help. Finally, you realize he's inviting you to see something, or warning you about something, or challenging you to something. Hard to be sure. Still, curiosity wins. You follow them through the trees, stepping over roots and weaving through creaking bamboo thickets. Their movements are fluid, practiced, silent. Unlike your group, who moves through forests like noisy, confused buffalo, the strangers lead you to a clearing where well-built huts stand in neat clusters. Their architecture is different, rounder, tighter, more meticulous. Smoke curls from a central fire pit. Tools lie neatly arranged instead of casually discarded. This is not a wandering group. This is a settlement, a thriving one. They watch you carefully, waiting to see your reaction. You feel your throat tighten, not from fear, but from the unexpected realization that your people are not alone in this changing world. Different groups have survived, adapted, built, carved symbols in caves, found higher ground, started over, and now somehow your paths have crossed. The tallest of the strangers taps your chest lightly, then his own, then gestures at both groups gathered together. Together, you exhale. Maybe this new land isn't just an escape. Maybe it's the beginning of something larger. That night, by firelight, your group begins crafting new stories, tales of angry seas, forgotten gods, and land slipping away into darkness. The fire crackles in the center of your new hillside camp, sparks drifting upward like tiny souls abandoning their responsibilities. Everyone is gathered in a rough circle, elders wrapped in cloaks, children sitting cross-legged, adults leaning on elbows or chewing roasted roots in deep contemplative silence. It's the kind of silence that only appears after a day of fleeing rising water and discovering that the world you knew has been rearranged like someone shuffled the earth's furniture. The flames cast long shadows on the ground, stretching toward the forest behind you. The night hums with insects. The air smells like damp soil, wood smoke, and fatigue. And it's here, in this fragile glow, that your people do what humans always do. When reality becomes too overwhelming, you start making stories. The first storyteller is an elder who insists she remembers this happening before, even though she absolutely wasn't alive the last time something like this happened. She raises her hands dramatically and declares the sea has a personality, one that becomes offended if ignored for too long. According to her, the ocean rose not because of melting glaciers or shifting plates, but because someone did not greet the tide properly this morning. Everyone turns to your cousin, the waterline inspector. He looks horrified. Next, someone suggests the sea was reclaiming land that belonged to it long ago. A kingdom beneath the waves where forgotten gods were waking up, stretching their ancient backs, and deciding to remodel the shoreline. This storyteller gestures so wildly he nearly smacks a child in the face. The child doesn't seem to mind. The myth is good. Another villager offers a softer explanation. The land itself grew tired. Tired of holding up forests. Tired of supporting villages. Tired of dealing with people who never put things back where they found them. According to this myth, the land sank simply to take a long, overdue nap. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like scrolling through social media after a disaster. Everyone has a theory, none of them are correct, all of them are entertaining, and half of them involve some kind of giant creature. Eventually, it becomes your turn to speak. You did not ask for this responsibility. You are still processing the fact that your home is now part of the ocean, but everyone is staring at you, expectant, eager, illuminated by firelight and fear. You take a breath and begin. You tell a story of a sea spirit, calm for centuries, patient as stone, who watched people build too close, too confidently, a spirit who whispered warnings through shifting tides and murmuring shells, a spirit who, when ignored, simply rose up to remind the shore who was in charge. The group listens, wide-eyed. You continue. You describe the land as a great animal, breathing slowly beneath the soil, an animal who shifted in its sleep, reshaping itself without meaning harm, a world alive, restless, ancient. The elders nod, they approve. Then, because myth demands drama, someone adds that the sky must have played a role too, sending signs maybe, or hiding them. A child insists the moon pushed the sea with its night powers. Another child claims the sun melted something important. A third child says giant fish lifted the land like a rug. You let them have this, The fire burns lower, embers glowing like scattered jewels. Shadows dance across faces, across the ground, across the new huts wobbling in the distance. Someone hums softly. Someone else tosses herbs into the flames, sending ribbons of fragrant smoke drifting through the circle. And the myths grow. Every retelling becomes more elaborate. Every detail is shaped by fear, hope, confusion, and the very human need to explain everything, especially the inexplicable. You watch your people craft a fresh mythology from the ruins of the old world, weaving meaning into chaos, dignity into disaster. Maybe the stories aren't true, maybe none of them are, but they make the darkness less frightening. They make the loss feel shared. They make the future feel possible. As the fire dwindles and the night deepens, you realize when the world reshapes itself, so do the stories. And sometimes the myths you create become the foundations of who you will become next. You stand on a ridge looking over the drowned plain. Where your childhood village stood, the ocean now lies glassy and silent. You realize that one day people will forget this place ever existed unless you remember it for them. The wind brushes past you, cool and steady, carrying the faint salt scent of the sea as it drifts inland. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. Below, the water stretches wide and still, its surface reflecting the sky like a perfect, indifferent mirror. It is beautiful, stunning even, but in the way a polished stone can be beautiful, lovely to look at, but heavy with meaning. You try to imagine the village beneath the surface. The memory still feels close, recent, alive. You can almost picture the huts standing in their usual uneven rows. You can hear the sharp clack of shells being cracked open, the laughter of children racing to the lagoon's edge, the snapping fire from the cooking pit, the quiet, constant hum of a place full of living things. But now the sea is swallowing those memories, smoothing them over with each gentle wave. Nature is an efficient eraser. People around you have begun to move into the new rhythm of your inland settlement, preparing fields, weaving mats, repairing shelters that wobble slightly less each day. There is a new sense of hope flickering in the community, faint but real, like the first flame coaxed from damp kindling. But you're not ready to move on, not yet. You crouch and place your hand on the warm earth beneath your feet. It feels solid, grounded, present, unlike the shifting coast you left behind. This land is new to you, but the memories it must now hold are not. You force yourself to breathe deeply, letting the air settle into your chest, allowing the past and present to touch without collapsing into one another. Let's make a modern comparison. This is like leaving your childhood home behind, watching it get demolished or repainted or turned into a store that doesn't even sell anything you recognize, while you're the only one who still knows where the squeaky floorboard used to be or how the kitchen smelled in midwinter. Memory becomes the architecture. You stand taller and prepare to leave the ridge when something catches your eye, a single piece of driftwood gently knocking against the rocks below. You know that wood. It's from one of the old fishing racks. The moment hits you like a soft punch to the heart, unexpected, unavoidable, a remnant of your former life, carried inland, as if the ocean is returning a fragment of what it took. You climb down and retrieve it. The wood is lighter now, softened by waves, but the shape is unmistakable. You run your thumb along its worn surface, feeling grooves left by hands you knew, hands you loved. Back on the ridge, the wind shifts again, lifting a strand of your hair. You tuck the driftwood into your satchel, a keepsake, a marker, a reminder, not a burden, just a thread connecting who you were to who you'll have to become. Behind you, someone calls your name. A child, one of the younger ones, runs up to you, breathless, clutching a painting made of crushed berries and charcoal. She proudly announces, "This is our old village." The drawing is crude, endearing, inaccurate. You smile because it is perfect. You kneel beside her and show her the piece of driftwood. "This," you tell her quietly, "is from there." Her eyes widen with wonder. She doesn't understand, not yet, but she will. One day she'll pass the story on, adding her own details, her own flavors, her own truths, and she will remember because you remembered first. Together you look out over the drowned plain. The child leans against you. The wind exhales softly, and you realize that memory isn't just something you carry. It's something you build, something you shape, a story you choose to protect. The sea may have taken the land, but you'll keep the world that stood upon it alive for generations. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your pillows, and let the quiet of the room wrap around you, take a slow breath and think about the world you just walked through. A world where the ground moved beneath your feet, where the sea kept creeping closer, and where you somehow managed to save an entire cultural legacy with nothing but determination and a very large wooden bowl. You survived sinking soil, rising tides, confused animals, cranky elders, suspicious inland caves, and hills that should not have existed yet. You rebuilt homes on land that wobbled like desert. You met strangers who looked at you like you were the strange one. You learned to swim on accident, invented new myths by firelight, and carried memories no water could wash away. And through it all, you, a prehistoric citizen, with questionable tools, a brave heart, and sand permanently stuck between your toes, kept going. You adapted, you climbed, you rebuilt, you remembered, because humans always do. It's funny, isn't it? We look back on people from thousands of years ago and imagine them as distant, primitive, impossibly different. And yet, when their world shifted, they did exactly what we still do today. They worried, they joked, they argued, they improvised. They celebrated anyway. They held on to the things that mattered. They protected each other the best they could. They made meaning out of chaos. And you, their stand-in for the night, did it too. So as you drift towards sleep, wrapped in the comfort of modern blankets, in a home that does not wobble, with running water that stays where it belongs, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the ancestors who survived storms, floods, earthquakes, and empty stomachs, so you could someday fall asleep to stories about them. Rest easy. The world has shifted many times, and somehow, humanity always finds higher ground. Good night.